Okay. Trust you have it up on yours. Can you see it? Okay. I think we should be good then. Hey, everybody. I'm not sure exactly. This is kind of new for how we're doing this tonight. So I just want to thank you for joining us right now. This is going to be our conversation on tonight on Dawn of a New Day 365. And I'm just so excited about what we're doing. So we're going to talk about the conversation that is around our nation right now, you know, still dealing with the pandemic. And then, of course, social injustices that we are seeing, or racial injustices that we are seeing. And so I have a panel of ladies who are with me right now to embark in this conversation. And so we're just going to give a little time. Please feel free to come on with us. Please invite a friend so that everybody can have an opportunity to chat with us and be a part of this dialogue on today. So come on in. Okay, so I'm figuring it out as we go. All right, great. Hey, Chelsea, so good to see you. Kate, good to see you. Good to see you. And ladies, feel free to invite anybody to the group that you would like. Yeah. Hey, Carmia. Carmia is joining us from Hawaii. Yes, so glad to have you. Again, invite a friend if you haven't already. Okay, and we have Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Good to see you, friend. And then Margaret, glad to have you. Katie, it's been a long time. Okay. We'll give just about a minute. And look, I was talking about Pastor Jackson and her alias name, and then I just realized that I have my husband's name on mine, but it's all good. All right. Hey, Constance. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay. And I think broadcasting this way, Zoom live to Facebook also has a delay in it. So what I'm seeing and what I'm saying is two different things. And so I was trying not to confuse myself too much so we can go ahead and get started. Hey, Anna. We were just talking about you. Glad to have you, Anna. Hey, Miss Jackson, Miss Warlita, happy birthday, or belated at this point, maybe. Those that birthday photo shoot looked really good. Glad to have you. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. I thank you, ladies, again. Please invite others to be a part of the conversation on tonight. So as everyone knows who's a part of Dawn of a New Day 365, our group wants to focus on living and leading lives that leave legacy, learning from our mistakes, listening to sound wisdom and God's inspired word, but being transparent enough to not only heal oneself, but to also help heal and restore others. Like I say all the time, it's about our testimonies and our testimonies helping others to overcome what they're going through. So today, I like to open the conversation, and I want everyone to feel safe enough to share. I know that some of us right now are not feeling safe as a race because of the civil unrest in our nation, due to the blatant injustices that we are seeing. Others of you may not feel safe enough to have open dialogue with anyone right now, especially Black and brown people. And still some, going back to the original layer of the grief, have the burdens and concerns still about the global pandemic that is still affecting our nation. But regardless of what it may be, Dawn of a New Day 365 is a safe space. And so I hope that you would keep that in consideration as we have the dialogue and as we have the chat. But welcome. So first I want to start by introducing our panel that we have today. And so our panel, and I will call them in alphabetical order. We have with us Dr. Radisha Brown. Dr. Radisha Brown is a licensed mental health therapist and wellness coach, known as the mental weightologist. Her mission is to help busy women lose their mental weight, keeping them overweight. She wrote her story in the best-selling book, Girl, Get Off the Couch. She is the host of Girl, Get Off the Couch podcast, where she focuses on helping women to overcome trauma, pain, and weight gain. So please welcome Dr. Radisha Brown. Next, we have Miss Lindsay Dycus. And I forgot to ask you, Lindsay, before we started, if that's how you pronounce your name. So I hope that I'm right.
You did great.
So Lindsay, she is the director of an advocacy program for Newton. It's a national program here in the state of Georgia for Newton and Walton counties. She has a degree in psychology and has been advocating for the best interests of children in foster care for 12 years. Lindsay is the mother of 2 little girls and 3 bonus daughters. Lindsay works to empower women and to lead by example. So please welcome Miss Lindsay Dycus. We had one other panel member who's not here with us today, but she is a part of Dawn of a New Day 365. So I still do want to mention her. Leanne Jean. Leanne is the founder and CEO of Still Waters Professional Counseling. She's actually in Maine right now, and so she is unable to be with us just due to reception issues. But she was a graduate of the University of Maine and has over 20 years of experience in mental health, working with children and families. She has also specialized training in the area of substance abuse. And so we hate that Leanne was unable to be with us today, but she'll be adding more to our conversations in the future. Then we have attorney Brittany A. Green. She's an attorney and presently the chief of domestic violence at Caddo District Attorney's Office. She is also the founder of Bonfire Leadership, where she trains others in leadership, team building, and the will to win. So please welcome attorney Brittany A. Green. Next, we have Pastor Anna Morris Jackson. She is a lifelong resident of Mansfield, Louisiana, a retired middle school English teacher. Pastor Jackson has a master's of education, and though she has worked in all forms and levels of ministry, she currently serves as pastor of Wesley United Methodist Church in Mansfield, Louisiana. She is the mother of 2 adult daughters, Anitra and Donna, and she has 2 granddaughters and 2 grandsons and 1 preciously handsome grandson. So please welcome Pastor Jackson. Next, we have Miss Dominique Levy. Dominique is 23 years old and a recent COVID graduate, but graduate nonetheless, of Valdosta State University, having received a bachelor's in political science with a minor in African American studies. She's aspiring to become an international criminal attorney and work to reform the foster care system. Dominique is a positive young leader working with the NAACP and other organizations. So please welcome Ms. Levy. Next, we have Ms. Tresca Haley Mitchell. Ms. Mitchell is a resident of Shreveport, Louisiana, and a native of Mansfield, Louisiana. She has 2 sons, ages 18 and 15. She holds a master's degree in educational leadership. Tresca has devoted the past 22 years in the field of education. She spent 10 years in the classroom, 5 years as an assistant principal, 4 years as a principal, and the last 3 years as an instructional coordinator. Please welcome Ms. Tresca Haley Mitchell. All right, next we have Ms. Gwendolyn L. Morris. Ms. Morris is currently the Executive Director of OLR Wizards Management Consultant Company and serves as Treasurer of Visions, Inc., an international organization that deals with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Her past experience includes CFO for helping others pursue excellence, Executive Director of Fresno Works for Better Health Advocacy Center, whose mission included reviewing policies and systems that impacted some of our more at-risk communities. She has 40+ years of experience working with high-risk youth and nonprofit organizational management. Founder of Leadership West Fresno, a leadership development program for high school students. And she is a past president for Black Women of Organized for Political Action. I think I messed that all up. In San Joaquin Valley, Chair Housing and Community Development Commission in the city of Fresno. Excuse me, Auntie Gwen, for messing up all your acronyms and everything, but thank you so much for joining us, and please welcome Ms. Gwendolyn Morris. Okay, next we have Ms. Michelle Nail. Michelle is a retired U.S. Army captain. She currently serves in civil service as a manpower and equipment analyst in San Antonio, Texas. She is a speaker on domestic violence, an advocate for nursing homes, and is a ministry leader for Covenant Community Church in San Antonio. She has 2 adult children, and I think I left this out, but I think 4 grandchildren. I could be wrong, but please welcome Miss Michelle Nail. And then last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Gretchen Petterway. She is a pediatrician affectionately referred to as Dr. G, Dr. Pepper, and Dr. Gretchen by her patients. Dr. Petterway, a graduate of Grambling State University and LSU HSC Shreveport School of Medicine, has worked at Christus, since she completed her pediatric residency in 2009. She is married to Felton and has 2 sons, Dylan and David. As a doc mom, she is passionate about approaching every clinical decision from 2 perspectives, as a physician and as a mom. Most importantly, being a physician is more than just a job for her. It's her life's calling and ministry assignment. She is thankful to provide a medical home for her patients from birth and beyond. So please welcome Miss Gretchen, or Dr. Gretchen Petterway. And I am serving as, of course, your host, Dawn Charleston-Green. And like I always say, those who know me, Dawn like the morning, Charleston just like the city, and green just like the color. So again, thank you, ladies. And so tonight, we're going to keep our questions brief. We only have 3 questions tonight because we know that the conversation will open up on its own. And so our first question, and I'm going to direct it directly to Dr. Petterway, is where are we from a medical perspective in terms of the global pandemic? the second part to that question, and I hope I'm not interrupting you now. The second part to that question is, when is it projected to be safe to return to normalcy? So where are we from a medical perspective in terms of the global pandemic, and when are we projected, when is it projected it will be safe to return to normalcy?
Okay, so I think that question is a catch-22, but I will say that, of course, with COVID-19 being a pandemic, and it definitely affected different areas at different times, right? And so here in the United States, we see that even here, it affected different states at different times. We're all across the United States. So I want to speak specifically about my region and what's going on here. Let's talk about the disparities first and foremost. And I think that's really important for us as we have, quote unquote, the conversation, to see how African Americans are disproportionately affected by this virus. And so as a physician, I want to talk about that because I have that question often, and that's why. And I think that factors back into a lot of social economic issues that existed previous to this COVID-19 pandemic even starting, right? Which means that there may be a lack of access to health care. And when you think about poor communities, they may not have transportation to get there. And then you also think about families who live in poor communities that they're grouped together. So say you have a 2 or 3 bedroom home, where you may have 10 people living in that one area. So there's a lot of factors that go into why African Americans are disproportionately affected by this virus. And it shines a light on health disparities that were there for a long time. And so that was really important for me to stress as part of the conversation. So here in Louisiana, we are entering into phase 2. So most states across the United States are in a phased approach to getting back to normal. The question is, when will we ever get back to normal? And that's the hard question that I have to answer from day to day. If I have a mom call me, she says, Gretchen, well, Dr. Pettaway, when is it safe for me to take my kid back to daycare? And you know what? A lot of times I just have to tell them straight up, I don't know, because let's be real. We have a group of experts saying that, okay, now we're in phase 1, and then they pick a date, and then they say we're going to phase 2 based off of computer models, based off of data that may be coming from the Department of Health, from their local states. But at the end of the day, to be honest with you, nobody really knows. And that's the stance that I take. So when I first started my conversation about this, the question, the thought in my mind was, this is a catch-22, because at the end of the day, nobody really knows. This pandemic is unique in the fact that nobody really knows. And as it has wreaked havoc globally, the experts have done a great job with predictions, but at the end of the day, they, just like us, are living through this for the first time themselves. And things change from day to day. As a doctor, we get one set of rules one day, and then 2 days later, you have another set of rules. Like one day, oh, don't wear masks. The next day, please wear masks when you go outside. So, so I think at the end of the day, everybody is in this thing together, and all of us, regardless of our educational background, regardless of our, where we are, I'm in medicine or an attorney or teachers, we are all in this thing together, and we're all trying to figure it out as we go. And for one person to say that they know, they really don't. The next thing you said was, when will this thing end? And I think I probably answered that as I spoke, is that we really don't know. We know here in the United States that as people are starting to get out and be more active and be more social, that we are seeing a bump in cases. Even though overall the trend may be going down, you're having bumps because of that. So from my personal opinion, we don't know. The next question will be, will this become will this just go away, or will this become a seasonal virus like influenza or other viruses? And so that's yet to be determined as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for your insight with that from a medical perspective. And so we don't know. We don't know. And for us, it's all of our first times experiencing this. I always, tell people I feel like this is our Old Testament experience. Before the pandemic, the things that we read about in the Old Testament were almost like fairy tales to us. And so we are having our Old Testament experience. But I want to just even talk about it because as you were saying, we're going back to normalcy or trying some form of normalcy in phases or stages. I want to talk about what that looks like for other people as well. So if Ms. Haley, if you could just kind of talk to me from an educational perspective, how are the schools approaching going back into children returning to school? Because I saw a report or a list from the CDC as far as their recommendations, and in my opinion, they might as well stay homeschooled because there were just so many restrictions, to what they could or could not do. And so I just kind of want to hear it from a leadership standpoint from you. How are educators and leaders in education approaching the return?
Absolutely. Listening to Dr. Pettaway, I surely can relate, because from day to day, we are waiting on decisions to be made at the government, from the from the CDC at the government level down to the state level to the district levels. And we all are very concerned. And I think the message that educational leaders want everyone to understand is that the safety and well-being of staff as well as students is foremost important. There's just so many factors when you go into, are we ready to go back to school? What will it look like when we do go back to the school? You have the different socioeconomic areas within the district. You have different funding sources when you look at what schools are provided with, where students are coming from. All of that has to be taken into consideration, as well as what the staff is coming, keeping the staff safe as well. When I first saw the CDC guidelines myself as an educational leader, I thought, wait a minute, hold up. There's no way, no way. So I know as a parent, just reading those is very intimidating. And as an educator, I'm thinking realistically, there's no way. We don't have the funding to do as they are recommending us to do. So there's going to have to be some conversation with leaders as well as medical professionals to just see where we can meet in the middle for the safety of the children as well as staff members. Because yes, I'm an educational leader, but I am a mother first. And I have an 18-year-old son who's going to be a freshman in college. So we are also waiting to see, will he start in August? Will he not start in August? It has already impacted him as far as finishing his senior year, beginning some transition into the summer and going into college. And also I have a 15-year-old who'll be going back to school, whenever that may be. So we don't have any definitive answers, at the moment, because as Dr. Pettaway stated, we are just all in a holding zone and waiting on those recommendations to come through, and what will that look like. And I think, honestly, it's going to look different from campus to campus, because children are different from campus to campus. And that's just not saying here in Shreveport, Louisiana, but that's all over this state, all over the state of Texas, California, wherever. It's just going to look different. Children are different, schools are different, districts are different. So it's going to be quite interesting to just see how school is going to look. I've never experienced anything like this. And it's been challenging thus far. I don't expect it to be any less challenging in the future. So we'll just have to wait and see what it brings us.
Now, are there any talks about possibly allowing parents to still homeschool and not be penalized?
Yes, there are. Can y'all hear me? There have been some conversations about homeschooling. You know, in the state of Louisiana, that is an option. Virtual schooling is an option already for K through 12 students. So absolutely, virtual homeschooling is definitely an option. I know for the state of Louisiana. And there are some talk of parents that I've spoken with that are seriously considering that option. Uh-oh. Okay.
I think she fell off.
Yeah, I think
while she's coming back, we can continue maybe just a little bit on that, because here in California as well, you know, the option is there. We're doing a lot of electronic, you know, schooling, where all of our schools, students here in the Fresno Unified all have computers. Mm-hmm. They've also placed buses in neighborhoods that do not have access to internet.
Oh, and wow.
So a school bus will pack the internet on its bus and take it to those outlying communities where it may not be available. Wow. And so a student can pull right up to, let's say we have an elementary school, and you can pull into that parking lot because that bus is there, and you can get on the systems from there. And so that made it a little more accessible to students that may not have that. We're relying a lot on technology. And the response to will it be the same? It will not be the same, and it should not be the same.
Right. I think that is wonderful. That is wonderful.
Yeah, because we're transitioning to a different time. And so we have to embrace that transition, whatever it looks like. And probably step in front of the gun as opposed to stepping behind it. Being creative in how we deal with the current situation and the offerings that we may have for homeschool kids. Like as a parent, I may not be able to homeschool mine, but my next door neighbor may be able to. And so next door neighbor may be a math teacher. On the other side, maybe an English teacher, or you may have opportunities for that, where you can also do some cross educating of our children.
The question has been raised about parents and childcare. And that is a legitimate question. And I think that once again, it varies on the situation. I know that has been a hurdle for quite a number of people. We weren't ready for this. To be totally honest and transparent, we were not ready. And
can y'all see me?
Now we can.
Did we drop?
You did. But we kept rolling. She can't hear us.
I attended a meeting this past week with the school district in DeSoto Parish. That's where I live. And one of the considerations that they're doing, that they're considering that parents know how to handle the summer, but not the school year. So they're aware of the situation and making different suggestions as to how they might handle it. Nothing has been settled yet, but the school district is very aware that the regular, for example, it's one of the options that our district is looking at is rotational classes. It's like some kids might go Monday and Tuesday, and some might come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the next week they'll flip.
Right.
But where that would work for the school system, they are very aware that that may not work for the working parents. They're addressing it.
I definitely wanted to say something as a working mom because I was considered an essential worker because I'm a physician, and it was really hard. It was hard on us. So my kids were typically educated at night, and sometimes it was 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I just remember emailing my 8-year-old's teacher and saying, okay, mom, get an F this week because we were way behind, but I promise you I'm going to catch him up over the weekend. So I get really concerned about that as a parent who works and not being a teacher. I mean, not an in education. Right. You know, I found it to be very challenging and difficult. And I think that that's a hurdle that a lot of us will have to deal with if we don't go back to school. how do we engage our kids? It's almost like I felt like I was going to school myself, if that makes sense. You know, especially with Common Core math. I mean, you know, it was like a new language.
I was also going to say, just from a student standpoint that actually did go through education when COVID was at its peak, especially in college, and we had to transition basically from in class to online. I will say, if they do end up going back to school, I'm pretty sure they're going to have more online courses anyways. I will say pay attention to like the transition for your kids. Because I know a lot, for me and my friends and a lot of my peers, it was very, very hard to transition from going to class, having 18 hours in session, and then going online and having 18 hours online. It was like a completely different experience. And sometimes you get a little bit discouraged. It's a lot more reading. It's a lot more focus. It's a lot more like determination that you have to put into that. And people, I feel like a lot of us felt like our teachers weren't understanding that sometimes, and we felt like we weren't being heard. But I will say it's a really rocky transition. It was really hard, especially being a graduate. So every class I took, I had to make sure I passed them. I had to make sure every assignment was an A. But I will say the support and just teaching your kids how to read more, like even if it's just a regular type of book, like those reading comprehension skills really help with online classes, because that's really what it is. It's different than having a teacher sitting in front of you trying to teach you. So yeah.
Okay. Hey, y'all, can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was out of the loop forever. Are we still live on Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay, missed it. I don't know what Twilight Zone I was a part of. Okay, I'm back. I'm glad I am among a group of talkers who know how to keep the conversation, even if the host has left the building. Okay, all right, so I missed it. I'm glad y'all had a good conversation. Dominique, you were able to give your input?
Yes.
Okay. Somebody fill me in. Where are we?
Wrapping up the education aspect of it and talking about the difficulties that parents are facing. I think Lindsay has.
Lindsay, go ahead.
So to piggyback off that, you know, also a working mom, have a kid going into 6th grade and a kid going into 3rd grade. I don't know how we got them through 5th and 2nd this year. I failed as a parent, classes each week. But as a social worker, the thought of not going back to school is terrifying, not only as a parent, because I need my children to be educated by somebody else clearly, but also I need to know that eyes are on children. Children are not safe necessarily in their homes. And we have experienced so many, just this massive decline of calls into our child support hotline numbers. So we know child abuse is happening, but we don't know where. We can't reach it. And it scares me having, I see the teacher feeling my pain. We want to make sure children have at least 2 meals every day. School can guarantee that. So we're a little worried that if we do another session of online, like what's happening to those children in the homes that need our help and need our support. And I don't know how our family's going to handle it next year if we have to do online, but you know what? My kids are safe and my kids are okay, and we'll figure it out. And it may not be real pretty. But I do mostly worry about the kids and safety, about not going back to school. I think the conversation with our school systems need to be something where the school is checking on each individual child in some way, whether everybody goes to school, you know, kind of scattered days. Just so eyes can be on kids.
I will say that Caddo Parish leaders are aware of all of those obstacles that you speak of, and educators, we definitely are concerned about children being home alone and not being fed, and that our district came up with a very wonderful way of assuring that children would get meals throughout the week. And I
loved hearing those stories. I loved hearing about buses that delivered food on weekends, on holidays, make sure they had enough to get through the weekends if it was a Monday through Friday. And I think we have some really crazy, brilliant, inventive people that have kept our kids safe. in the ways that they know how. But it scares me to have to go another semester without kids being in classrooms, being seen daily by a loving, caring, nurturing adult.
Absolutely.
I will also say I feel like it's also harder to learn online. Like it's harder to actually learn and actually retain that information because you have a computer in front of you. Most people will look it up on Google, know it for the test, and then keep going. So I will say that kind of took, what's the word I'm looking for? That took the fun out of learning, at least for me. I know everybody doesn't like learning, but I like learning. But it kind of took the fun out of learning, and it took away, like that passion, that drive to want to do it. So not only, if they also do have problems at home, I think that's really a big issue too, if they also can't even escape to go to school. Because I know when I was growing up, school sometimes, I didn't grow up in a bad home, but sometimes school was kind of like my escape, like my fun time, like away from my home. So I will say that too.
Yeah, and I know like my son, he was a COVID college graduate as well. But that last semester, it was, even though, he was grateful for the time of slowing down, he was a bit discouraged because there were, of course, a few of the classes, of course, senior year, that's when you were in the meat of it. And he really didn't feel like he got what he was going to get. Like he was a mass communications major. And so he was taking a graphic design and a photography class. And so, one of the things he was saying, his professor was like, well, take these pictures with your phone. He was like, I've been taking pictures with my phone. I need to know how to use a real camera, I said, just get out of the class so we can, be done with it. But definitely, I know that there is that degree of separation when you do not have the teacher there. Because having to teach fourth grade, I didn't like fourth grade when I went through it. So now having to be the homeschool teacher of fourth grade, come on. Did not like it at all. There's a new math and the box method and all this kind of stuff. We're going back old school. You have to learn that again next year. That's where we are. Really, this is where we were. But so now what are we thinking in terms of, Pastor Jackson, from the church perspective? Did y'all cover that already while I was gone? Okay. All right. Unmute. I got you. Okay. Uh-oh, it's still not unmuted. There we go. There we go. Okay.
From the church perspective, and when we talk about the word normalcy, I hope we don't go back to normal. I hope we pick up where we are and meet the present needs of the people. And the present needs of the people is not normal. I serve a small church, so we did not have an online presence. We have an online presence now, and we understand the need because people are worshiping with us from all over the country. So we understand, and some of the people that are not able to attend service, they're coming and worshiping with us. So I don't think there's a need to go back to normal, is to see what can we do to help the present situation. As reaching out to the young people. I've been intentional as a pastor, reaching out to my kids, talking to them. How's it going? How can I help? And sometimes they just need an ear to hear what's going on. And a nod, it's okay, we're going to get okay. So I think more of that should be going on. I think that the church, I think we have to be clear within ourselves and with our communities of faith, who we are, whose we are, and what we should be doing. And even in the story of Christianity and Jesus, it wasn't a status quo and things as usual. His mission was to reach the marginalized, to reach those who have been oppressed or outsider or that kind of thing. So I think going forward, the community of faith, and many churches are doing great things, but I think there's room for even small churches to do phenomenal things. I guess there's an old saying, bloom where you plant it. So I think if each person would bloom where they're planted in their community, in their situation, that great strides come into contributing.
Now, do you think that there is a lot of pressure from a pastoral standpoint, though, now not just being responsible for the souls of your members, but also their health?
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. That's definitely a consideration. And you guys know I'm retired, so I'm in that number as a pastor. I'm in that number. I need to take care of myself, but I would not want any harm to come to anyone, you know, from being present at a worship service. So we're looking at the guidelines. We have not re-entered yet because we just don't think that we're ready. So yes, I think that there is a pressure to want to make sure that everything is as safe as possible so that no one has to fear, I might get sick. But then they, like, as been said, we don't know, even with the precautions that we take, you know, if that's going to be a safe place.
Okay.
That's a concern.
Okay. Anyone else before we move on to our second portion of our question? We good? Okay. And I am not tracking what's coming in through chat or anything like that. So if someone could just help me out with that. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our second question, which is, where are we in terms of the state of our nation and communities with regard to racial injustices? So I know that this is a heavy place for us. It's just like the pandemic. It's not just in our local communities. It's global at this particular time. And so, you know, where are we? And so I want to go ahead and bring attorney Brittany Green in, and I want her to just kind of talk about it from her stance, what she's seeing, what information she's been receiving, if you would at this time, Brittany.
Sure. I think, first of all, let me say I've been very, very encouraged by the uprisings, the protests. I have been so encouraged and motivated by people's willingness to risk their health, their safety, and their well-being to have their voices heard. And one of the things that I think we have to confront early on, and we have to confront it head on when it comes to the state of race relations, is that racism is really rooted in lies. Racism is about dishonesty. And so people who are racist, who are anti-Black, they are pushing a dishonest agenda. We have all heard different aspects of that agenda, that Black people just weren't good enough, Black people just weren't smart enough, Black people just didn't work hard enough, and all of that. And I think one of the most encouraging aspects of what's happening now is so many of the lies are being exposed. And when we say that we want to have progress on the issue of race and how Black people have been treated in this country and really in this world, then we have to be honest. And that honesty has to come from all sides. It has to come from all communities. And once we're honest, then we can start to make progress. And I think as someone who's involved in the criminal justice system, I, particularly as a prosecutor, I know what I see happen in courtrooms on a daily basis. And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, because there has to be the emphasis on having a fair-minded person in a position of power. There has to be an emphasis on having people who have a diverse viewpoint, diverse experiences. And I think that we have to do a better job of that. And I have also been, on the one hand, I'm encouraged by seeing people's voices be heard, but I'm also absolutely stunned at the continuing abuses that we see. Obviously, this has been brought to the forefront for because of a number of police killings and a number of abuse cases at the hands of state actors and racist people. We think about George Floyd. We think of Ahmaud over in Georgia. We think of Breonna Taylor. We think of all these people, and all of these incidents led us to where we are now. And so I'm still stunned by the magnitude of suffering that has been visited upon the Black community. And it is something that is overwhelming. And I think to be Black in this world is to be overwhelmed in knowing what we have to deal with and what we have to get through just to survive on a daily basis.
Right. You know, I just heard Stephen A. Smith, and normally I don't even really like him because he's just so extra for me on ESPN. But I heard him kind of explaining the Black experience yesterday, and he said, when others have a cold, Black people have the flu. You know, if they have the flu, we have pneumonia. Like it's always, and that's just kind of, you know, has been our experience. And I talk about the first time I remember, in particular, experiencing racism or prejudice. I was a freshman in high school, and I wasn't. I had just finished the 8th grade, hadn't even gone into high school yet, but I was going to majorette camp at Northwestern. And for those of you from Mansfield, y'all know I was the first Black majorette at Mansfield High. So it was new. They hadn't seen it before. And so I remember that we had an uneven number on our squad. And so I was the odd person out. And so I was going to have to room with somebody from a different school. And so I went into the room because I've been taught to love and just, you know, how people are, just whatever. I had no idea what I was walking into. But as soon as I walked in, my roommate was a white girl, and it didn't shake me or anything. But she looked at me and said, I can't stay in the room with you. And I thought she was saying because we were from separate schools. And she said, my grandmother says that I can't be with Black people. And I remember just being devastated in that moment, just like, well, how are we going to figure this out? You know, are you saying that I'm not going to be able to have a room because your grandmother says that you can't be around Black people, or what is going on? And I remember when I went to the staff, you know, you're embarrassed by this. I mean, because not only was I the only Black majorette at Mansfield High, I was the only Black majorette at the camp. And so when they made, when I went to the directors and told them what she said, they said, we'll take care of it. And so then they moved me in the room with the actual instructor. And so I said, well, what are they going to do with her? And they said, nobody's going to stay in the room with her. If her grandmother does not want her to be with Black people, then she needs to be at camp with nobody, because we're not going to. And so we're thinking now, well, that had to be 1988, 1989. So I thought back about that recently and said, I was so glad that they were bold enough to make that decision. No, we're not going to put you in a room by yourself and put her with somebody. No, she's just going to be by herself, and we'll have a roommate for you. But that was my first. And so that was kind of devastating. I had never heard that before. But being from Mansfield, Louisiana, we went to separate proms. We know that. I mean, I don't even know what year Mansfield High started doing combined proms. I don't know. Because
it was definitely after 1995.
This is crazy. Yeah. But in 1992, I attended the Black prom at Mansfield High School. And my white friends who I have, and I was a complete child of integration. My cousin, Pastor Jackson's daughters, they remember when there was an all-Black school in Mansfield. I was integration from the very beginning. I never not went to school with people of other races. But still, even with being in integration from 1979, in 1992, when I graduated, or in my senior year, I went to a separate prom. So Mansfield is not that far removed from just the segregation that was there, you know? And I don't know how, any of the rest of you feel having had that experience there in Mansfield. But like I said, that was 1992, and I was at a separate prom. So, yeah.
You know, I will say, if I can just speak up real quick, being from Mansfield too, and experiencing some of the same experiences you had, Dawn, with this being a Black physician in the South, I must say, was hard. And I experienced a lot of racism because I always felt as if I had to work harder to just be on the same playing field as my counterparts, just to be accepted. And I think I'm glad that we brought this up, because it points out that racism is more than just police brutality, but it also involves systemic racism in other forms, like institutionalized racism. I remember going through medical school, completing my residency, and I'm like, hallelujah, I'm finally done. I'm ready to get my first job. And one of my first job interviews, the CEO of that corporation basically looked at me and told me that they were not interested in hiring me because of the type of patient I would attract. Wow. And it was crushing to me because I worked so hard to get there, and here I am, a pediatrician ready to take care of everybody's baby, you know, and no matter what color they were, you know, to be told by a hospital executive that I wasn't good enough because of the type of patient I would attract was very damaging to me. And I think racism, even if we don't admit it, subconsciously plays a damning part to our view of ourselves. You know, so it led to me having this chronic self-esteem issues because I always felt like I wasn't good enough because of some of those racist situations that I had encountered. Even being a physician, thinking like, wow, man, I made it, I'm an MD. And even with that, having to deal with the systemic racism that goes along with that. And I will say, and Pastor Anna being online, that it really took me to understand my Creator and understanding that, okay, if I'm here, you know, God purposed me to do this, and his son died for me. And for that reason, that makes me good enough. But it took me 20 plus years to get to that point. So I think it's important for us to understand, even though we're seeing racism in the form of police brutality, that that's really only one facet of it. That racism rears its ugly head in so many factors in the banking industry, you know, the housing industry, in medicine, it is in education, you know, it is systemic. And, you know, it's almost like the death of George Floyd in a medical, it was almost like his death was a Band-Aid that was pulled off of a wound, you know, that has been there all along. And we tried to patch it up. The Band-Aid wasn't going to heal the wound, but we just put it on there to stop it from bleeding. And when George was murdered before the world's eyes, that Band-Aid was removed. And now you can see the bleeding, you can see the hurt, you can see the pain. You know, some wounds, like we have abscesses and we have to cut them open. It was under pressure. And when you cut it open, it explodes. And that's what's happening right now, just from a medical standpoint. That's my frame of reference. And so I hate that this happened, but at the same time, we can use it as a platform to show that it's not only police brutality, but it exists in so many other areas as well.
And it's so ironic that you use that analogy, Dr. Gretchen, about the Band-Aid, ripping the Band-Aid off. That's a message that I said recently. We have to rip the Band-Aid off. I was talking to my little girl one day, and she was just wearing this Band-Aid for life. And I was saying, girl, if you do, the bleeding is gone. Will you please remove the Band-Aid so your leg can actually heal? And so, you know, sometimes just with the things and our issues in our life, we just cover them with Band-Aids. The bleeding is gone, but the healing still hasn't taken place because we're still covering it up. Right. And so I'm glad now, unfortunately, you know, at the death of George Floyd, but now getting some air to some issues so that we can get to the root of the issue, really. So we got to rip the Band-Aid off so that the healing can take place. Prescott, did you have something?
Yeah, I want to, Attorney Green spoke on being encouraged and by what we're seeing. Because the generation, I believe, let me get it right, is it millennials? The younger generation No, X, Y, help me somebody.
Z.
Okay. Generation Z, they're not playing. They're coming in and they are attacking. They are attacking and they are not backing down. I don't see them backing down anytime soon. I am encouraged by seeing a melting pot of individuals fighting for the cause. Not just Black, everyone from all walks of life, joining hands globally, like not just in the United States, y'all, everywhere, coming together and saying, this is not right. It's not right. And I am very encouraged by that because I can't say that I've seen that in my lifetime. Right. And they're not backing down and they really don't care who you are. They're not backing down. And it's the right thing to do. Right is right and wrong is wrong. Elder Green said that yesterday, and that is so true. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And there's just enough of the wrong and there's enough of it. I think we've just had enough. We've just had enough, and it's time for everyone to stand up and be heard and say enough is enough.
Okay, so I want to put everything in order. So Dominique, I'm actually coming to you first. So as we're dealing with this, I want to start from the millennial Gen Z perspective and just kind of what is the mindset? What is the mindset?
So you have millennials, and you have Generation X and Y, and then you have Generation Z. I feel like Generation Z is my generation, mainly like the 90s and then to the 2000s, like that generation, that's my generation. And I mean, I think at this point, the way we feel about it is we're tired. Like, why are we still having this fight? Like, why are we still fighting for this? Like, why are we still fighting for equal rights? Why are we still fighting for people to stop killing us? Why are we still fighting for equal wages? Like, why are we still fighting for something that, one, we deserve, because our ancestors created this country, for one, okay? Just putting it out there. They created this country, they had this country on their backs, and we've always worked for this country and built up this country up until this point. So we're kind of just like fed up with what's going on. And I think a lot of us are actually angry, like we're angry. And of course, my generation is not perfect. We don't handle everything well the same way our old generation does. I do feel like, yeah, I feel like we do act on emotion a lot more. And I do feel like sometimes we lose the message and we let our anger and we let our passion kind of fuel us, which is good. But sometimes we got to dial it back, I think, and remember like what our message is. Like, what are we actually trying to accomplish? And I've been talking about this on Twitter and Instagram and all of my social medias for the longest. And I keep stressing to people, I would say, we need government reform. Like, we just need basically just honestly a whole new government, because the government to begin with, the Constitution, the laws, they weren't made for us. They were never created for us. They were never created for us to excel in this world. And they're not going to until we actually change them, or we tweak them, or we just create something new. And I think, I can't remember exactly where, but I know in Britain, they've literally had like 12 constitutions, just because their world, like their society has changed so much that they had to change the Constitution to mold their society. And I just don't understand why the United States, which is, you know, land of the free, equal rights, has still yet to change a constitution that says to us that we can change it if we're being denied our rights. Like, it literally says it, that we're allowed to do that. So I don't understand why it hasn't even happened yet, or why it hasn't been discussed, or why, you know, we're going into martial law. I mean, it could be just so simple, just to give human beings their human rights.
Thank you. So
can I say something from the white point of view here?
Yeah.
I was speaking with my husband today, and I can say that I've been dating outside my race since maybe the 6th grade. So I would say I feel mostly more comfortable outside my race and with, you know, with Black personnel than white personnel. That's just how I feel. And I was telling him today that I don't understand how white Americans think this is their land, you know? They think that this is America's white America. No. First of all, it was the Indians they took it from, and the, you know, Black Americans built it, and then is white America is white. I don't understand that. That gets me mad because I have, you know, I have two mixed kids, and my husband has, you know, 2 children as well. I'm raising my grandson who's 9, who's, you know, he looks completely, you know, not white. You know, I'm the only white person in the household, and I'm raising them, telling them, you know, what's going on. And I'm trying to raise them as strong Black men, and I'm a white woman. So how am I doing that? I'm listening to everybody like you guys and learning how I'm supposed to raise these Black young men. And I'm trying to raise them as best as I can, and trying to tell them, how is this a white America? How are they supposed to say this is our country? How are they supposed to say this is our land as a white America? That's false, and it shouldn't be that way. And this is coming from someone who is white. Maybe I feel like because I've been around, you know, Black people all my life, and I feel like maybe I feel like I'm part, you know, I don't know, but I feel, you know, that it's wrong. It's wrong, it's wrong. So I stand behind Black Lives Matter completely. And I've had to unfriend a whole bunch of people since, you know, they say all lives matter, and I had to correct them. Okay, you know, we had to go into that. But it's, you know, some of my family members don't understand where I stand, but a lot of them, you know, they, I don't know, I've had to set them in their place, you know, but I don't understand why it's called like white America or the white, you know.
Now, Michelle,
yes.
Dr. Gretchen was asking, did you have you ever faced any racism separate? Well, let me say it like this. I know that probably you have not experienced any alone as just yourself as Michelle, but are there people when they see you with your husband, or they see you with your children or your grandchildren, who look at you differently?
You know, only one time we were on a cruise, and I was the only white person together and with them, and older gentleman said, "Oh, you have your white trophy wife with you." My husband got perturbed. I'll tell you, he doesn't. I don't think he knows how to respond to that, because we don't usually get it. But me, I could care less. You know, and I understand his point of view, because he doesn't want that attention. I understand that. Me, I tell him, look, nobody's doing anything for us on the outside. We take care of ourselves. Don't let it get to you. That's my point. But I don't understand. I mean, maybe I just don't understand, because like you said, Gretchen, you had to fight so hard to get where you're at. And he's, you know, same way. And when he's been shot down a few times for jobs or whatever, I don't understand that. And I'll probably never understand, you know, his side. And I'm there for him to try to build him up whenever he is shot down, or anybody breaks him down or tries to, and I try, you know, he gets defensive and he gets mad. And I'm like, well, why would you let that person get to you so much? You know, just don't, that's just his ignorance, you know, it's that other man's ignorance. Don't let it destroy what we have, or don't let it destroy, we're okay. You know, he's being the one that's ignorant and low life or whatever. But, and my daughter, she's had a few instances where someone called her the N-word, and I've had to bring her in and tell her, you know, they're the ignorant ones, not you. You know, don't worry, you're beautiful. And, you know, and like my grandson, I've told him, I've had to tell him, he was on TikTok. You know, he was like, Mom, who's George Floyd? And I was like, oh. So I had to go in and tell him about that. And I have to tell him these things. And I have to tell him, hey, they're going to treat you differently. If the police pulls you over when you're, you know, older, this is what you got to do. It's a shame that we have to tell our grandsons and sons these things, but we have to tell them and get them prepared. Because if we don't prepare them now, what are they going to do when they get older? And that, you know, and we just
and
got to
Michelle,
build
you
them
and
up.
I were talking this week, and we were talking about the story I had shared. I had posted on Facebook about a conversation I had with my son when he was 11, when he was running back to me in Walmart. And I had to say, do not run. Don't ever run. Don't put your hands in your pocket. Don't, because the assumption will be made that you are stealing. And so he just kind of looked at me because at the time he was 11. And what do 11-year-old boys do? They run, just having to explain to him what it would be perceived as him as a Black boy running. And I could have bought anything in Walmart that I wanted, but the thought would have been that he must have been stealing something or would have been up to something. And so it was hard to have that conversation with him because it's almost like, he doesn't remember it exactly, but it's almost like just kind of ripping a little piece of his innocence. Like, just let me be 11, And I just, shared also, he had a fender bender the other week. He called me 3 times. And I was like, babe, just call the police. But he called me that many times because he was fearful that when he called the police to do his incident report, that it was going to turn into something else. And so my husband and I, we left, the house and went ahead and went so that we would be there when the police came. But why couldn't my son just call the police? It wasn't his fault. There was no damage to the car, but why couldn't he just feel confident enough to call the police and just to make a report for the fender bender without having to, in his mind, second guess anything about what was going to happen as a result of the police being involved? So
I think what we're dealing with is trauma, is racial trauma. So it's
so please come on in and Dr. Radisha and speak to that.
Yeah, so what we're dealing with is the accumulation of the effects of racism. Some people are looking at the George Floyd situation as an isolated, as a one thing, as why are you guys so angry? Why are you so upset? It was one bad cop. It was one incident. We're going to arrest him. We're going to arrest the other 3. Everybody else just calm down. What they don't understand, what we're dealing with is the trauma of multiple effects. Like Dr. Gretchen talked about going through school. We all have stories. You think because you get at a certain educational level that it comes with all the prestige and all of that. But at the end of the day, when you walk in the room, all they see is this face and the assumptions that come with that racism, that prejudice. And what I'm seeing right now with the George Floyd movement and Black Lives Matters, now the covers are coming off. You're seeing the true sense of who people really are. And like Michelle, thank you, sister, for sharing your personal story and testimony. I think we all can learn from your experience that you're finding that people that say they're don't see color really do see color, and it's really making it clear that we have so much work to go. We have so long of a journey, and like Dominique said, like, why are we still having this conversation right now? Is the fact that we have just accepted, we just experienced one traumatic event and just like, okay, that's one, that's another one, that's another one, but we're exhausted. We are emotionally exhausted. And it's just like, why are we still having this conversation at this day and age? And that's
Dr. Adisha, can you talk a little bit about historical trauma and what that means?
Exactly. So, if you look at the history of Black and brown people, the white Americans, as Michelle was talking about, how can you say this is your country when, Native Americans were here when you got here? And then Black and brown people built the country, but this sense of us being less than, and that sense that comes from slavery, like ownership. Black people were property, but they weren't even humans; they were property. And we have people living that were still a part of that generation that remember those times, that remember being slapped and beaten and nothing happening because you were property and you had a price tag. And you weren't human and able to vote and to speak. And just recently with the case in New York where the five or six young brothers got arrested and convicted of rape. Attorney Green probably knows more about this, but arrested and convicted and they were innocent. So this is just things that we're seeing now that we're experiencing as a part of our time in this lifetime. And so part of that is being able to acknowledge that we're dealing with trauma. just from our own personal wellness, mental wellness, is also for community, for healing all of us. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take me, it's going to take Michelle, it's going to take Attorney Green, it's going to take the pastor, it's going to take all of us working together. But the first step is acknowledging that there is a problem. I have a problem when people say all lives matter, because you're minimizing and not acknowledging that we have a problem. We're never going to heal until we acknowledge there's a problem.
The problem with the all lives matter argument to me is just like, they think that we're saying just because we say Black lives matter that we're not saying everybody's lives do matter. We're not saying they don't. We're just saying that Black lives do matter because for so long they have not mattered. I remember a couple years ago when Trump was running to become president, he literally made a speech referencing to Black people. And he said, what do you even have to lose? Half of y'all are unemployed. Half of y'all are under, like, close to the poverty rate. And I'm just like, we're people. We have lives. We have families. Like, what do you mean? What do we have to lose? The only difference between you and me is that I'm Black. That's it. It's literally the difference. And I just think it's just crazy that people literally still have this stigma that, just because of someone's color, just because of a stereotype they have about someone, that they are less than and they deserve less than that.
I just want to jump in and say one thing and highlight something that a point that Dominique raises when she talks about that this false narrative of all lives matter. I think what we have to really be careful with and we have to focus on is not explaining and not excusing. Because what I have found is that people really know what they're doing. Anti-Black people know the truth. And when I started by saying racism is rooted in lies, the anti-Black contingent of folks, they really do know the truth. And really at the heart of this thing is, without your racist tendencies, who are you? Without Black people to focus on, you really would have to confront your own deficiencies. The racists would have to confront their own deficiencies. And so one of the most freeing things that I did was I stopped explaining, I stopped excusing. And I think what we have to really focus on is to center Blackness, is to center Blackness and to pour resources, compassion, and empathy into the cause of lifting Black people, because all of us have spoken of these experiences that we have had because we've lived in a world where Blackness has never been centered. It's never been centered in education. Black students have never been centered. Black professionals have never been centered. Black healthcare patients have never been centered. Each of us as a Black person walks into every single institution, whether it's a school, a medical facility, or even just a retail shop, and we wonder what might happen to us. We wonder why we are experiencing a certain thing. And God help you if you find yourself in the criminal justice system as a Black person, you can just hang it up. And so I think what we have to really focus on is understanding that the people who are anti-Black, they know the truth. And so we don't waste any energy, any effort explaining to these people who already know. And instead we turn all of that energy and that effort into the cause of uplifting and advancing things that will help Black people. Because I think about Breonna Taylor, who would have turned 27 today. And when I got to work, I looked at something that I could do. What can I contribute to? What kind of monetary fund can I contribute to? Can I make a phone call? Can I write a letter to say, we need justice in this case? And for me, that has been so affirming, is to figure out how I can take action on a given issue and try to advance the agenda of saying that we have to protect Black people. We have to protect Black initiatives. And so I think when we talk about what is happening, we have to figure out how to take action. Everybody can't protest. Everybody's not going to march in the street because, hey, somebody needs to pay some bail money to get people out of jail. Somebody needs to go to work to contribute to help people. We need to buy supplies. Every single one of us has a role that we can play. And I think we just have to focus on action, less explaining and more action.
Great point. And I'm about to go to my aunt really quick to Gwendolyn Morris, because some of the things that you were saying, Attorney Green, I know are in the vein of her heart. Before we go there, because I know she got a lot to say, Lindsay, just really quick. So, you know, I sent you a message. I know that there was a post that you made recently on your Facebook page, and you had a Facebook friend who did not necessarily agree with your stance. I think you had social workers. This social worker believes that all Black Lives Matter. And so I saw how you addressed it. And so I just kind of wanted to talk to you just real quickly about how has this narrative been for you as a white person?
Let me just start by saying I'm humbled to be in this group. Y'all are amazing women doing amazing things, and I'm honored to be here amongst you. Black Lives Matter isn't a new thing for me. I've been working with foster care kids. You see a lot of the racial divide. You see how the foster care system disproportionately treats Black people. You see how their parents in the criminal justice system are disproportionately treated. You can't miss it. You can't work in this field and miss it. And, you know, I take a stance with the job that I do, because I do a lot of the fundraising, I do a lot of the grants, I do a lot of the community partnerships, and I try to keep kind of everybody happy, which is part of my job. So on my personal Facebook page, I have, you know, volunteers, I have board members, I have community members. And so I don't ever really make political statements on there. And to me, while this is a political statement, everything is political right now. This is a civil issue. This is a human rights issue. And I can't be silent about that. And so the post that I made, it said school social workers, and I'm not a school social worker, but it just said, you know, the school social worker thinks Black Lives Matter. And I was really intrigued kind of how that would go, because I've never really made political statements or racial statements in anything other than like cute pictures of my kids and what we're doing on my Facebook page. And I've been really surprised the people that have white people that in good faith, like their heart was in the right place, and they would say, but all lives matter. It's like, yeah, all lives do matter, but for all lives to matter, Black lives have to matter. They're the ones that need the help. And my faith is the Christian faith. And I made a post since you put me on the panel of just talking about like, hey, folks, let me help explain this to you. Like when you say Black Lives Matter and your retort is all lives matter, this is kind of what this feels like and what this looks like to people of color, to our Black and brown brothers and sisters. You know, we're looking at, you know, Jesus going off to help the lost sheep. The other sheep didn't complain that Jesus went to go help the one. This is Black Lives Matter. All the sheep are important, but we've got to help all the sheep. And to help all the sheep, you've got to help the Black Lives Matter sheep. It's been really interesting. People have privately commented. I've gotten a lot of phone calls, texts from people that I didn't think would respond very positively. They're shocked about what's happening around them. White people that had no real clue, because, you know, segregation, you know, that happened a long time ago. And, you know, I thought all this racial stuff was handled by now. And just having that conversation with them and saying, no, it's still not fair. It's still not right. We still got a long ways to go. And it's amazing to me how quickly the conversation has turned to, well, it's not okay for looting. What? We're not talking about looting. We're talking about a man got murdered in the street. And let's talk about, you know, the real, I'm sorry things got looted, but the bigger issue isn't looting. It's the fact that people's lives are being damaged, are being taken away from them. So it's been interesting to kind of have that narrative with people and have that conversation with them. And I have some pretty strong feelings that Black people have carried a lot of weight for a lot of time, and it's time for white people to stand up and help, to help carry that weight, to help with that narrative, to show what's right in the world. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and it doesn't matter what skin color you are. That doesn't matter. But there's been several people on my Facebook page, like, the thing that I need to have everybody agree on to comment is that you're just going to be polite. And if you're there to be open-minded and to have a conversation, absolutely. Even if I don't agree with you, if you can be open-minded to learn, and I'm happy to learn too, we can have that conversation. But it's sad to me, the people that have been so adamant that this is a looting issue or that this is an out of control issue. It's exactly like Dr. Pettaway said, it's the Band-Aid's off. The Band-Aid's off and the wound has exploded, and they've been ignoring that Band-Aid for a long time. They've been ignoring that wound for a long time.
Thank you, Liz. I wanted to definitely get your perspective on it, because I know that some of my white friends, and I've been very grateful and thankful for, I always have felt like I've been a good judge of character for the most part. So I know that my white friends have reached out and, and have the empathy and have expressed themselves in ways to say, I hear you, I understand. And I think even when I brought in the narrative of, as a Black mom, of a Black boy, how I feel, I think that really opened some eyes as well, because, our children should be able to be innocent as long as they should. But for Black and brown people, that, just the kind of the narrative of what it's going to end up like starts a lot sooner than, our white counterparts.
I had a conversation with my coworker. She's a Black woman and she has 2 Black sons. One's 30 and is a police officer in the town where we work, and one is 17. And, figuring out his way, figuring out his life, graduated early. And we were talking yesterday, and I said, my kids have been with my aunt and uncle for a couple of days. And I said, when the kids come home, we're going to have, they didn't know anything about George Floyd or anything like that. And my kids, are rather young. They're going into 6th and 3rd grade. And I told my coworker, I said, when they get home, we've got to have this conversation about what's happening in our world, because it's important. It's important for white people to teach their children how to love other people. I hear conversations frequently about how Black families are having to teach their Black children how to be safe in a world and not die. Hey, white parents, it's time to step up and teach our kids how to grow up in a world to one, not do that, but 2, to stop that when you see that, stand in those gaps, have those conversations, make them tough and hard. And sitting with my kids last night and having that conversation, just watching their little tiny innocent minds be blown by, what do you mean a police officer knelt on his neck? Like, he was in handcuffs, he couldn't move. Like, yeah, this is the reality that other people face every day, and what we don't realize. I'm a big advocate of, what you experience is what your normal is. Our normal isn't scary. My kids are always super excited to see police officers. They think they're really good people that do a lot of really great things for them. I have them on my board. We do fundraisers with them. And the police officers that I know are all amazing people. But my kids just see that uniform and automatically go to, hey, awesome, thanks for doing what you do. They're not kids. So they have a different narrative than other kids have. And part of what I think it's a job as a white parent to do is to teach your kids the narrative on how to have other people have your normal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. And so Miss Gwendolyn Morris, please unmute yourself want to bring you into the conversation. Definitely. We do a family call with my family, and it's, COVID has brought all of us closer. I know I shared that on Dawn of a New Day. I know it seems like the walls are caving in on us, but I think the walls are pointing us in the direction that we're supposed to go, so that you don't go to the right or left anymore. Let's keep it straight in the middle of the road. And so we've had the opportunity to have more conversations. And so I've learned some things about my aunt Gwen during this time. And I just want you to just kind of add to the conversation. I know you received a lot and processed a lot, and now you're ready to go.
and in honor of time and listening to everybody, because one of the key things that we don't do enough of is we don't listen enough. And when we do listen, we don't hear. And so the practice of being still and allowing us to be heard and other people to be heard is something that we need to practice a little bit more of. And so I'm living that, I'm practicing that myself. And so honoring all the voices that came before, it's all good and it's all true and it's all real and it's all our reality. Dominique, I have a granddaughter also who graduated from Barnard this year, and going on into law school with international law as well. And so we've had some of these conversations as well. I just kind of want to do some quick, and even in addition, I forgot some of my background also is health policy. So a lot of the stuff that I've dealt with over the years is about policy and where those changes lie. I kind of want to respond real quickly to Sister Nan for a quick minute when we talk about, what did we do during our time? We produced some hell of a children. So part of what we do and part of what we talk about, and it was touched just a little bit, is generational trauma. We talked about trauma, but trauma is generational as well. And if we add that back to the health of African Americans in this universe, part of that DNA that we carry, which causes us to be more susceptible to all of the illnesses of the world, is due to generational traumas. And at some point, this is for us, we have to learn how to break that, and it can be broken. And we have to learn how to speak truth to it as well. One of the other pieces, and it was touched on, we talked about privilege. Privilege is not just for white folks. We have us living in white privilege too. And so, but it's called Black privilege, as being the only Black, the first Black, I could go on and on and on, because I felt I met in those shoes a little bit too. My degree is actually law enforcement. I've done private investigation and some other things. And so you wonder, well, how did you come from there to where you are now? And that's a long journey. I'm not the Z group. So within our lives there, we do it many different ways. And I know I shared, Don probably, or Nikki didn't know that I was part of the Panthers back in the day too, for our Valley. And so there's a lot to be said. And I'm going back to Dominique. I applaud you guys. I was so angry until I saw what has occurred. I feel good. I not only feel good about the protesting, I feel good about the rioting, because without those consequences, there will be no change. Without consequences, there is no change. So all of us are needed in the journey. It is not the first time that our white brothers and sisters have joined us in this journey. You guys are not new to the table, and neither of any of us. So that also says that we have to keep the fight going. I'm going to make it real short after that one. Policy. We talked about health. We talked about education. To some degree, we talked about employment. We did not talk about or speak to entrepreneurship and owning our own. We have some entertainers, sports folks, and all who are coming to the table. And this is it's not the first time, but the dollars are larger. You know, we could talk about the Harry Belafontes and the Sidney Poitiers and all of those, you know, the Maya Angelos and all of those who gave their money, who gave their mouth, and who gave their time and their energy to it. It's just a time for that. My only other piece to it, and we talk about, you know, going to jail. Somebody had posted, oh, as a Black person, how many, have you ever gone to jail? My response is, I'm a Black woman, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I'm almost 70 years old. How many times have I gone? He who stands for nothing, right? Malcolm X. So my contribution is just this, really, seriously, because we could take each of those components, each of them, and break them down and come with a policy. I'm a manifesto writer. So if you give me an issue, then I say there's a manifesto to be written and to be followed. And a lot of it is regional. And the situation is universal, but how we handle it is regional. How you handle racism in Mansfield, Louisiana, and how I had to handle it here in Fresno, California, where you do not believe that racism exists, but it has been subtle and a part of our lives, all of our lives. They're different, but they're the same. My contribution, folks, is just be you, do you, and do not do it silently. And at the end of the day, make sure that whatever you put in place results in a change of action, a change of policy. It does not have to be a huge policy. It could be a small policy. It could be a policy in a neighborhood, right? Neighborhoods are made up by elementary school sites. It could be a policy of a city. Cities, you know, are made up of neighborhoods. It could be a policy of the county. It could be a policy of the state. It could be a policy of the United States. But if we are doing what we're doing and we do not change a policy that impacts us, then what are we doing? And why are we doing it? And this is just the beginning. I just wanted to do this last shout out, because I could go on and on and on. So I hold myself. There's a lot to be said, there's a lot to be done. The mayor of Washington, D.C. today, Black Lives Matter Plaza. Deal with that one, Trump. Deal with that. Oh, I love that lady. I'm from the faith-based community. We are the first faith-based organization within this region. I was one of the ones who put it together. Right-wing Republican ministers who have not to date spoke out against what Trump is doing. If you go underground a little bit and delve into it, they're now speaking out. They're now speaking out. They're coming and said, that is not who we are. And if we get caught up and no one mentioned Republican or Democrats or independents, but it's all real. And it's all based around a power play. Nobody mentioned power. It's all about power. What are they fighting for? Maintaining of power. And the fear that they will not be able to sustain themselves. Fear, is it fight or flight? They've already had the flight because we know our United States was started through penal colonies. The flight was when they were kicked out of their countries and sent over here. And so then when you get here, you have to step on somebody, but they weren't intelligent enough to organize it without getting help. I'm not going there. I am saying, thank you, ladies, as women. I've heard the phrase and I responded to it. Oh, she has balls. Or she's got big balls. Man, I don't have any balls. I'm a woman. I got a uterus. I produce.
Come on.
All right? Do never refer to us and never allow anyone to say that about us. We are women. We fight based on who we are, not based on who men are. And it's all real. And I always have to stop myself. And I do that. And I thank you for providing the venue for this to take place, Nikki. And it's kind of deeper, folks. the hurt, the pain, what we need to teach our children is deep. It's deep. So we honor it, we listen to it, we hear it, and we encourage action. We encourage action at every level of development. It does not matter who you work for. It doesn't matter who you went to school with. It doesn't matter how old your children are. I forget my children's age. That's because they're all over 40 or close. And so I forget, because I think I'm their age. There's a place for all of us to transition what is taking place right now. And it doesn't have to be a big one. It may just mean, somebody out there on those streets. I had one of my granddaughters was actually arrested the other day. And I was so very proud of her. So very proud of her. Unbelievably proud. Girl, but let me tell you how. Protesting in Los Angeles, right? On her way home at the end of the protest with a group. Police surround the group. It was before curfew. Say, don't worry about it. Sit down. Just wait. Just wait. Just wait. We'll be all right. We'll be all right. This was a peaceful group of young women and men of all colors. So they sat very quietly, and you might even have seen it. They sat very quietly in the street, waiting. They were on their way home before curfew. They waited and set them there until after the curfew time and arrested every one of them. There's a lot to be said about that. Part of it is they're an easy target because they're good kids. They're good kids. There's not going to be a big uproar about it. But what they don't realize, the impact that they left on those kids. So then we spend our time talking our children down to say, okay, think. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be passive. Passionate. All of that is good. End of the day, be conscious. And make sure that those decisions that we make are decisions that lead to one. And I do one more. One of my daughter-in-laws is a clinical psychologist as well. And she reported to her organization, I really feel hurt that nobody reached out to me, and I'm one of the only Black people here. Mm-hmm. And then so all of a sudden, the supervisor responds, and their supervisor responds, and she gets a call from HR. She said, hey, what should I do? I said, don't respond yet. Let them try to figure it out. I said, because this is where I am. Girl, you finna get a raise. All of a sudden, you finna move up, be still, just wait on it and stand your ground.
Now, one of the things I want you to talk about before you put yourself on mute, we had the conversation last week about knowing our place. So the last part of this is, as women, what is our place and how do we make an impact towards change? And so we talked about policy, but I just want you to just kind of speak on just kind of how you close that, talking about knowing our place as far as where we are to the story.
We are the story.
Come on.
We are the story. We are the story. It's as simple as that. And we carry ourselves knowing the story. We are, I really can't answer that because, I am that I am. And that was a gift that was given to us as human. Everything that we need, everything that is good and benefit has already been given to us. And we are. Who is that? I am somebody. We can show that. As a woman, when you walk into the room, you know who I am.
Oh, as cool as I please.
Hey, when I walk into the room, my expectation is that everyone in that room pays attention. Because if I walk in the room, I'm walking there for a purpose. I'm not here to entertain myself.
Come on.
And there is power in what we do by sometimes doing nothing. Just be present. Be present and be conscious. Mm. My son, who was in law enforcement for a while as well, He was working in one of the correctional institutions and was stopped twice in one night. And every time they stopped him, he and another guy, and they both over 6 feet tall, Black men, and every time they stopped him, they had to, show a badge. Show a badge. You guys, that's just a reality of life. That's a reality of life, and it's not going to end soon, but we can keep working at it. We can keep working at it. We are, I am.
We are, I am. I like that.
Yeah.
One of the things that you said, you can go ahead and mute yourself, but one of the things that you were talking about in knowing the place is that, you know, the Dominique, they're grassroots on the ground. We're seeing them moving forward. Some of us are not all at the same place to be able to do certain things, but that doesn't mean that we can't do anything. Maybe like Attorney Green said, you know, who's going to pay the bail money? Who's going to be the prayer warrior? So everybody still has a place in the movement, whatever that is. And so
let me just add this real quick to that, Nikki,
yeah.
if you don't mind, just real quick to that. One of the things that we're contemplating now for Sister Nan is the Grandmother's Brigade. Grandmother's Brigade. 65 and older in the front of the lines. Some of us are licensed. Some of us are prayer warriors. And for when I say licensed, you guys, that's licensed to carry. Some of us are prayer warriors. We're all something. But put a group of Black women, old Black women, in front of the line to take care of our babies. To take care of our babies. That would change just a little bit. So what I'm suggesting, like you're saying, is we all have a role to play. My role is to go in when my son calls me for businesses, and sometimes he can't get to the door for a policy or somebody's not paying him any attention. I walk through the door. When I walk in differently. That's what we have to do. We have to be in front, on side, and behind. But as Black women, we're used to that. And that's not to exclude, but we're used to that. Okay, now I'm mute for good.
Thank you. And you see why I waited. I had to wait because I know it was brewing up in her. So I had to wait. I knew everything everybody was saying. It was building up in. I had to wait. But I thank each of you so much for all of your conversation. I'm not sure if Dr. Radisha, I know she was on call tonight, so she may be handling another matter. Just really quickly, just thinking about back to mental health. We talked about historical trauma and all this, but understand this. We are going to see this even more now. There are going to be traumatic places just based on 2020 alone. Just based on 2020 alone, there are going to just be things that we need to constantly be aware of. You know, mental health is really just getting the platform that it needs for us to be honest about it and open about it and real about it. But we are truly going to have to move forth intentionally concerning mental health, because 2020, whether it be the pandemic or whether it be the racial injustices, there are just so many things that are going to contribute to that narrative of historical trauma going forward. So, just like we were talking about, Lindsay was talking about our kids, and Michelle was talking about our kids having to have the story. We're going to have to, the children are going to have to process it too. We're able to have this conversation. The kids ain't on a Zoom call right now, trying to have the conversation, but they're processing. They're definitely processing. And so, that's something that we're definitely going to have to just keep at the forefront. And as our children, begin to have conversations or come home talking about certain things, we're going to have to stop and have those conversations and validate what it is that they're expressing, processing through that, taking the time. I did a message some months ago talking about, in the Bible, it talks about the children of Israel in Judges, it says that there arose a generation that did not know God, nor the work of his hand. And these were the generation that came out of the children of Israel, the ones where the Red Sea parted and they walked through on dry land, ate manna from heaven. How do you mean their children don't know who God is, right? And so as we go forward, we have to make sure that we have these conversations so that our children understand. We cannot do it again. We cannot go back to where we just become complacent and lazy and just living our life and doing the most. And, you know, like my aunt was saying, Pastor Jackson, I don't know that I want the normalcy that we had. I don't know that I want that. You know, I don't know that I want something that's open 24 hours a day, because if it's open 24 hours a day, I'm gonna find a time in the day that I can go there. No, help me to rest. Help me to have my rest so that my mind is clear, so that I have time to process what I need so I can have strength for the next day. So many times previous to now, we were just operating on fumes. And so I hope that we can maintain this sense of rest that we have right now. So that's just kind of all I have to say. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add to the end of this conversation?
I was just gonna say, as far as parents, I know you guys have kids. I don't have kids, but I have a nephew, and one of the things I will say is don't place, or I don't know if I'm saying this right, but don't place your fears on your kids. I know I told my mom that tomorrow I'm going to a peaceful protest downtown in the area that I live in. And she was just like, well, I don't feel comfortable with you doing that. And I said, Mom, I have to do this. I was like, I understand it scares you. I understand it's not something you would normally do, and you're scared. You don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen either. But I was like, if I don't do this, like, I owe it to my people to do this. I owe it to myself to do this. This is one way. Not, like you said, not everybody needs to go outside and protest and be on the front line doing it, but that's something I choose to do. And so with your kids growing up, don't shy them away from, you know, going out on the front line. Go with them, like, encourage them, because when you stop, like, their natural, like, want for something, like, it'll stunt them throughout life. Because honestly, I feel like at one point I was really scared to, like, speak up, because I was always told, like, don't talk around grown folks, and, you know, you're a child, stay in your child's place. And I think that kind of hindered me growing up a little bit, because I never spoke out. And then now I'm on the Zoom and I'm with a bunch of older women now, but if I didn't not like that. If I didn't season women now, if I didn't, you know, basically stop listening to, like, the people in my life that were raising me trying to hush me, then I wouldn't be the person I am today. So I will say, just don't put your fears on your kids. I know it's scary out there. I know you never know if they're going to come home, because honestly, with what's going on now, you kind of don't. It's very unexpected. But I will say, I'd rather be out there, you know, I'd rather be out there doing what I have a passion for, doing what makes me happy, than say I did nothing at all.
Right.
And a lot of my generation like to do stuff.
I'm so proud of you and what you're doing and what Rudy is doing. Rudy's participated in 3 protests, peaceful so far. But like you said, as a mom, I'm scared. And so then going back to what Auntie Gwen says, and that's the time I have to pray. When he leaves, I'm praying. I'm praying that he returns home and that he's safe. But I don't want to stunt that, because if he doesn't, who will? And
yeah,
so
and we're kind of doing it for our kids too, because I mean, we're gonna have kids one day, and so that means I don't want my kids to go through the same thing. Can y'all still hear me? I'm sorry. I don't want my kids to go through the same thing that I've been going through, or that my mom went through, or that my grandma went through. Like, I don't want my kids to have to experience that, because it's sad that you see an 8-year-old child on the street protesting, and she can't even have a childhood because she knows that people in the world think that she is less than just because of the color of her skin. That's sad to me. And I don't want my nephew to go through that. I don't want my cousins to go through that. So I have to fight now so they can have a better future.
Right. Well, you're getting shouts out on the chat. I see people commenting on Facebook. Your mom is on here and she says she's proud of you, Dominique. Yes, and others are also echoing the same thing. Lindsay, you had something else?
My final thought, just from a different perspective, most white people don't know Black people's stories. And I understand that that's hard to share, and that's a very vulnerable thing to share. But please keep talking. Please keep those conversations going, even when it doesn't feel good or feel comfortable. Obviously, be safe. Be safe. But have those tough conversations. And in the lives of your work, have those conversations with your clients, with kids in your classroom, with whoever you come in contact with, because white kids and white people don't hear them. They're not used to that, and it's activating. It's hard to hear somebody's personal story when you see that person in front of you and you know that what they've been through. It's hard to take a stand. So please keep talking. Please keep the conversation going, and forgive white people when we say really stupid things, not realizing that we're being really stupid.
Thank you, Lindsay.
On the chat, Kimberly Whitfield,
yes,
made a comment back a little bit. She was referencing having some of her white Christian friends, I believe, is the way she said it, saying that they were going to deactivate social media until all of this was over. And I found that comment when she typed that to be interesting, when all of this is over, because it was just too much for them. That's kind of how we feel right now. It's been too much for our people generationally. And, we are speaking to be heard. You can deactivate your social media if you like. You can stop watching TV if you like, but it's not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. It's time for a change. It's time for a change. And I like what you said, Dominique, about rewriting the Constitution. And see, that's that out-of-box thinking that we need from that younger generation. I want to say to all you, Dawn, Nikki, great job. Great job. What a fabulous panel. Great job. You did fantastic.
No, y'all
Ladies,
did it.
Each one of y'all, I have learned something tonight from so much. It's just so much to go and process. It's a lot. And I appreciate everyone being so vocal and willing to share your stories and to share your feelings. And Miss Gwendolyn, you bring so much, and you've been through so much. And thank you for being open and transparent and sharing that with us. And I felt like I knew so much, and now I feel like I knew nothing. But in my little 42 years, so thank you. You've truly blessed us, and all of you, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Dawn.
Yes. So thank you, Ms. Gwendolyn Morris and Ms. Lindsay Dycus and Pastor Anna Jackson, to you, Tresca Haley, and Attorney Brittany Green, no relation, Dr. Adisha Brown, Dr. Gretchen Petterway, Dominique Levy. Michelle had to go off because we stopped her time at the beach. Right. But I told her.
Can I say something?
Yes.
In regards to what Miss Haley just said about her friend, like saying where they need to, unplug, which I completely do say yes, because a lot of it is a lot of really overwhelming, and it is a lot to see all at once. But I feel like unplugging is just as bad as ignoring it. Unplugging is just as bad as pretending like it's not there. Like, Black people can't unplug from racism. We just can't. Like, that's not fair. Like, that's the privilege that I think my generation tries to explain to our white friends. Like, you guys have the ability to unplug. You don't have to go into a restaurant and wonder why everyone's staring at you, or wonder why why you don't belong, why you always feel like wherever you go you don't belong somehow. So I do, of course, take social media breaks, because social media is very overwhelming and sometimes it's too much. But don't let your ignorance be bliss. Like, don't uneducate yourself about what's going on. Don't hide from what's really going on every single day. So that's the last thing I had to say.
Good. Thank you, Dominique. Valdosta, they got you ready, huh? Ready to be a part of those conversations. That's right. Good. So just quick announcements, real quick. We know that this June is Father's Day. Don't forget the men, fathers in your life. But June is also Men's Health Month, as well as PTSD Awareness Month. So I want to go ahead and put out, I already have some of our sisters in the Dawn of the New Day movement who are going to come on in a couple of weeks and share their stories and their testimonies about dealing with spouses who struggle through PTSD to the extreme points of it. And so again, just talking about mental health. So just another conversation that we'll be having. So to those who are looking on Facebook, please be a part of the conversation. We have to learn as a community how to support everybody. And a lot of times we pass judgments or have certain assumptions about things or just don't have any knowledge. And so we just ignore it. And so I just do not want this to be ignored, because we have families who are struggling through coping with a family member who is dealing with PTSD. So yes, Dr. Gretchen, go ahead, please. Unmute real quick.
Unmute. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I really didn't have PTSD, but I had issues for years dealing with the low self-image, even being a successful pediatrician here, just because of things that happened in my childhood, and then dealing with the reality of, hey, I've arrived, but we don't care because you're Black. That put a damper on how I felt about myself. And as a mother, one of the things that I wanted to do was to make sure that my children did not grow up being plagued with feeling like they were not good enough. And so I started counseling about 3 years ago, and it helped me to heal. And so through my healing process, I wrote a book called I Am Cool. It's a children's book, so shameless plug, here it is. And now that and it's on Amazon, another shameless plug. But now that we're dealing with a global pandemic of racism, let me say that, because it's a pandemic. It's really important for kids to understand that they are cool. And I need them to understand that early, because I feel that low self-esteem can be something that steals a child's purpose. There's so many things that the Lord placed on it, like in the inside of me early on, because I felt that I wasn't good enough. I didn't do it. I just didn't step out on faith and do it because I was concerned about what someone else would say or someone else would do. And I could not face the judgment or face the criticism. So if you guys get a chance, go pick it up and read it to your kids. Let them know that they are cool. God made them just the way they are. And the scripture that I stand on for this book is, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Think about if we raise a generation of children who know that early on, how powerful they would be. And we have an example of that on our panel in Dominique, and I'm just really proud of her. And as I think about her in the example that she said even today, that's what I want to instill in my boys, that you are good enough, that your Black is beautiful, that you can do anything that you want to do, regardless of what anyone else thinks about it. So don't forget about our kids, making sure we have that conversation early on for them.
Thank you. And so since you did your plug, I don't want to miss the doctors have their books.
Well, I appreciate that, Dawn. I'm going to grab that book for my nephew, because that sounds really good for sure. My book is Girl, Get Off the Couch. It's my personal journey from losing 80 plus pounds. I used food to cope with my trauma. A lot of it happening in childhood, having a mom that was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and growing up in the foster care system. So I'm a foster kid. Lindsay, I know you work with foster kids. So it's really important for us to have the discussion and to recognize that we all have a story. And in order to change the current set that's out there, that we have to be able to own our own story and tell it the way that provides healing and hope for everyone. And Dawn, you got some magical connections because these sisters are powerful. I'm like, oh, look, I got a page of notes. I'm like, drop the mic, drop the mic. So thank you, ladies, so much for allowing me to be a part of it. I feel smarter just being in the Zoom with you guys. And I pray that you guys are successful on your journeys.
Yes. So, and going back to something you said real quick, Gretchen, just about being afraid, even with all the education you may have and all the greatness that others may say you are, still dealing sometimes with that lack of confidence. Dawn of a New Day started from me coming out of that place, because doing a blog and coming together with women and just empowering women on a different level was something that I had wanted to do for years. And so really it was through tests and trials and that darkness. I know I play on my name all the time, but it's true. It truly took me going through all the darkness that I went to appreciate what the dawning comes means. And so I stand on the platform of the scripture, Luke 22:31, when Jesus said to Peter, upon this rock, that's what our church, never mind about that. But Luke 22:31, where it says, Jesus said to Peter, Satan desires to sift you like wheat, but I've prayed that your faith will not fail. And after you have overcome, go back and strengthen your brother. And so somebody was praying for me that my faith will not fail. And I've been strengthened. I've been overcome. And now I got to go back and get my sister. You know what I mean? It's almost like Harry. I got to go back. I got some people that's still back. I got to go. I can't just be over here, in this success or whatever it may be by myself. We were talking about, the privilege. I can't be over here overcoming and into the privilege and not going back and getting somebody else. So I think that's, even with everything that we've been talking about tonight, we got to go back. We got to teach. We got to educate. We got to bring everybody forward with us. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So again, ladies, I thank y'all so much. You all are just a blessing so much. Lindsay, I appreciate you. I know it had to be hard, sis. I was trying to get my other girls to come on board with you so you wouldn't be by yourself. But I thank you so much.
Great company. It's wonderful.
Yes, and I appreciate you for being vulnerable and open and offering your perspective to this conversation. So, all right, y'all. All right, I'll see you on the horizon.